Welcome. And recently in my comments, I was told that this building could never have existed in prior times because clocks were not invented. And I thought that was really interesting, and I thought we would have a little look at the history of timekeeping and clocks. And they're attributing the ability to use clocks all the way back to 2000 BC. And not just a sundial, but we had water clocks, candle clocks in ancient China, Japan, England, of course the hourglass. But what about clocks? The earliest known clock with a water-powered escapement mechanism, which transferred rotational energy into motion, dates back to the 3rd century in ancient Greece. Chinese engineers later invented clocks incorporating mercury-powered escapement mechanisms in the 10th century, followed by Iranian engineers inventing water clocks driven by gears and weights in the 11th century. The first mechanical clocks employing the verge escapement mechanism, a balance wheel timekeeper, was invented in Europe at the start of the 14th century. Then, of course, the pendulum clock, most accurate till the 1930s when the quartz oscillators were invented. And now they say the atomic clock is the most accurate. But nevertheless, the clock really dating back to the 14th century. It's just the drive or the mechanism that is powering the clock that has changed. But really, clocks going way back. And this led me to the oldest clock around, the Salisbury Cathedral in England. Salisbury, England. And a true wonder, built in 1220 to 1258, so 38 years in that time period. And not only that, but it has a clock, and they attribute it as being the oldest clock in the world. And a very almost comical story, built by donations, moved, and finally a new piece of land was given and it was rebuilt, and the piece of land was donated by Richard Poor, a rich man, who gave the land on which the new cathedral was built. Very silly. And the construction was also paid not only by donations, but people who were asked to contribute a fixed annual sum until the building was completed. Incredible to imagine that these people would have needed such a cathedral. Again, the layout, very similar footprint of what we see at the Kölner Dom Cathedral in Germany and Notre Dame in Paris. And here, not only does this cathedral have a clock, but it has the tallest spire in the United Kingdom at 404 feet, and truly a monster, as we are looking at the Washington Memorial in a past video at 550 feet, and it was the second tallest spire in the region, the tallest spire being the Lincoln Cathedral. But the Lincoln Cathedral spires collapsed, making the Salisbury Cathedral the tallest. Previously, it would have been this Lincoln Cathedral. Like many of the medieval cathedrals in England, it was built in the Gothic style. It was the tallest building in the world for 238 years, from 1311 to 1548 AD. The central spire collapsed in 1548 and was not rebuilt for hundreds of years. The cathedral held one of the 4 remaining copies of the original Magna Carta, and really just a beauty. Here a look at what the cathedral spires would have looked like, and again a very similar footprint. And it too had a clock installed in the northwest tower in 1775. And here we get another look at just how incredible this thing is, even without the spires, and very suspicious that they would have just collapsed. And here a little look. Now we're not talking about a castle here, we're talking about a cathedral. And here are the people that will attend the services at the cathedral. Very unnecessary, and not to mention perhaps impossible for a people, at least with the stories that were given of the people in this time period. Just amazing. And here's a little look at the world's oldest clocks. Really impressive. A lot more interesting than our clocks. And just amazing. You know, here are the mechanisms. Now it was redone several times, and who knows, but just amazing. And even these characters on either side, really impressive for the time period, and actually very difficult to get a picture of it. Seems like they didn't want me to see this picture. And here again, a look at this Salisbury Cathedral from the air, and just as beautiful as any of them, and really seeming like a machine. And all of these parts, although they are beautiful, serving another function. And really all the housing around here seeming like a more recent era than any of this tech, even if it is just architectural tech. Today I was originally searching for some pictures of the World's Fair passports that I had featured in a past video, and I wanted to see some more, and very difficult to find any. We're told that the population of half of the nation visited this World's Fair in Chicago alone, and shortly after that they had the Midwinter Expo in San Francisco, and we're told that half the population rushed over there to experience that one. And yet, very difficult to find any passports. And here I changed my search to seasons passes, but really still no luck. A lot of pictures of regular passports, of course. But this led me to this image that's been popping up here and there. Recently we saw it in a really crazy looking picture of the Eiffel Tower, depicting a few other towers on each side of it, and always this building in the background, just glorious and beautiful. And I didn't know what it was, but I'd begun to notice that it was in all the older pictures behind the Eiffel Tower. And here it is, the Trocadero Palace, and just a work of art. And this is a World's Fair building, believe it or not. Apparently a somewhat temporary building built for a World's Fair. And here we can have a little closer look, and really remarkable. Once again, a building that could be designated as anything. Cathedral, Capitol building, Colosseum. And here in Paris, a World's Fair building. And the Trocadero is an area in Paris, France, across the Seine from the Eiffel Tower. So they tell us it's named after this battle involving Napoleon and Spain, and there was a village, and later it was arranged for the 1867 World's Fair. For the 1878 World's Fair, the old palace was built here. The palace's form was that of a large concert hall with 2 wings and 2 towers. Its style was a mixture of exotic and historical references, generally called Moorish, but with some Byzantine elements. The concert hall contained a large organ. Eventually it was moved in 1977, where it's still in use today. Below the building, in the space left by the former underground quarries, a large aquarium was built to contain fish. In 1937, the Exposition International was held at the old palace, and it was partially demolished and partly rebuilt, and the palace of Chaillot now tops the hill. Like the old palace, the Palace de Chaillot featured two wings shaped to form a wide arch. Okay, that's enough of that. So, here we can have a little look at these wings, and really, I don't think they did anything but demolish this center portion, and they're telling us the new palace is these two wings that are not connected. These were clearly here in the past, and this seeming like perhaps the backside, 1876. And here what seems like the front side. Pretty amazing to claim as a temporary building. And again, these wings still remain, even though they're telling us that they tore everything down and rebuilt it. Really, they've just removed this beautiful center portion, and really for no good reason. And once again, I'll look at a modern picture, and this is no palace. This is the lack of a palace, and perhaps just the exterior skeleton was preserved. Really an absolute shame. 1878 to 1936. That's it. And this does not seem to be the same temporary story that they give us, although they did use it for just a little over 50 years. Could this have really been built for a World's Fair? And here the Eiffel Tower, stripped down to its bare bones, and still boasting some pretty impressive technology, but not as impressive as the older pictures that we've seen. And the story is really ridiculous, but I just wanted to share this lost wonder, as it seems to have been popping up in the background lately. Built for the 1878 exhibition in Paris, France. And finally, I just wanted to show some of this art in this Lincoln Cathedral in England. Really, really remarkable, and probably worth its own video. But I just wanted to show this here. They say that this Tournai font was made from blue-black limestone during the 12th and early 13th centuries in the town of Tournai in Belgium. And what is this thing? You know, I've seen depictions of this type of bull on 4 pillars. And we see this in all parts, always depicted on 4 pillars and this bull type image. And is this depicting something great? And this kind of awoke something within me when I was doing my video on the Washington Memorial. They showed something again very similar to this, and touching close to home, it was actually donated by Utah. And here it is. Again, this type of either dome or bull, as we saw in the other image, on the 4 pillars. And a very common theme. And when I was doing the Washington Memorial video, I wanted to touch on this, but this seemed like its own kind of can of worms to get into. This was apparently donated. All states donated things to the Washington Memorial, apparently. And this was the one donated by Utah. And I just felt like everything about this was beautiful and perhaps original, except for the carving on it. The Holiness to the Lord and Desiree down here. And this just seeming as if it was carved, as opposed to this beauty that seems so perfect that it must have been cast. And, you know, this just being really sloppy lettering and not worthy of being on the same plaque. But I digress. Getting back to this image and these pillars. And even more recently, I was having a look at a little Google search in which I just punched in Tartarian pictures and a lot of interesting things. And without going down this rabbit hole, I just wanted to show this Tartarian lamb. Never really seen this before, but right away it struck a chord within me that this was depicting in a kind of coy way that same thing, the four pillars, some kind of ring on the top, and just not really sure, almost kind of eerie and creepy, but nevertheless something I thought was worth sharing and will definitely require more investigation. And finally, a little look at the second part that caught my eye were all these Tartarian foods and trees. The Tartarian cherry, the Tartarian honeysuckle, a map of Tartarian honeysuckle, very interesting, found in this northeastern region of North America. And here is a recipe, or I should say a dish, called steak tartare. Kind of gross. I used to watch my father make this for a customer. And it involves taking a piece of filet in a food processor with these various ingredients and an egg, and pretty much eating it raw. And of course we have the tart. And could the tart actually descend from the Tartars? And who could forget the famous tartar sauce? A sauce typically enjoyed with fish and chips. And a few others include this Tartarian countryside buckwheat noodle, and in old times the French used to make their crepes out of buckwheat, a Tartarian meat pastry, and this dish of potatoes, carrots, pickles, and tomatoes keeps popping up. Perhaps this was a Tartarian favorite. And for all we know, many dishes may have been changed, or even the names of foods. Maybe the potato was the patartar. Very interesting. So I thank you so much for joining me today. And do have a blessed day. Please like, comment, and subscribe.